Namibia, and not only Namibia, but Africa as a whole, we are all experiencing a shortage of energy. And therefore, it is necessary that we utilize all our available resources of energy we have. Whether it's renewable or whether it's fossil fuel, what we do not have is energy. In fact, we talk about having energy poverty, and therefore, we need to make sure that we utilize all our resources. The third issue I want to mention here was the recent oil discovery, which is probably more interesting to all of you, that we have with this discovery, and therefore, what is it going to mean to us? What must mean it to us in the first place, and how should we benefit from it? And the last fourth issue is just to talk about how we, all of us, need to be responsible custodians of all our resources. So the first one really is just to say, yes, energy issue is a very complex issue. We have seen, for example, of late, I think the last 18 months or so, we have all experienced the rise of fuel price. Those of you who have cars, every now and then there's a price increase in petrol or diesel. And some of you probably think it's because of Alweendo, who actually just decided to increase the price. And I keep telling people it's not me who is increasing the price. I'm simply the messenger of that bad message. But it's really because of the tension globally that we have got. And that tension involved energy. The conflict between Russia and the Ukraine, and suddenly the Russian oil is no longer available, that making it very difficult then for the sustainable supply of that resource. And since we are all buying fuel from the international markets, unfortunately then we are caught into the whole cycle of this geopolitics. And therefore we need to be very attentive to what is happening, so that at least whatever decision we make knowing very well what's going on. And we also know that currently, I think the global economy is it's all based on fuel, on fossil fuel. Although we all understand that we need to start to use renewable, but we know very well that we cannot do that immediately. Number one, we don't have all the resources, whether financial or otherwise, or technology. Nor do we have the time just to do that switch immediately. So, therefore, we cannot manage the energy transition issue in a very simplistic manner, like some people maybe thought we can do that. And that is, for example, when people already think this is simple, if you go to some of the conferences, when you hear about environmentalists talking about how we need to transition from this, and they believe that we can do it tomorrow, but those are the very same people who continue to use whatever it is we are using, whether it's your computer, everybody has a computer these days, you've got a cell phone, and all those actually are material made from minerals, for example, that are mined using fossil fuel energy. And while we admit that we need to do something, because climate change is for real, we also just know that the transition cannot be a linear event, but it's something that has to happen over time. Now, the second issue is about of how to utilize all our available resources. In other words, we do have fossil fuel-based resources, we also got renewable. And therefore, at this rate, you are likely to get more energy out of your fossil fuel. There was a study made that shows that a solar power plant has been able to only give power for about 11% in a 365-day period. that percentage jumps to 25 when you talk about wind power. But it jumps to 92% when you are using fossil fuel. You can see that, yes, there's renewable, but we probably need to do much more for us to be able to say, yes, now we can transit and still be able to power the global industry, as we all know. Namibia and many other African countries, as I was saying, really, we do face a deficit in energy. And that limits our economic growth and also negatively affects the living standard of our citizens. And for us to address the issue, it's really important that we make use of all the available energy resources, including non-renewable. But I always say this, that to say we are not saying that we're disregarding the climate change issues. Definitely not. We know that it's for real. We're all aware of all the floods that we have been seeing, not only on the African continent, but even somewhere else. So climate change is for real. The only point we're making is to say, if Africa were to exploit all its fossil fuel energy sources, Africa will still contribute less than 1% of the emission that create climate change issues. And therefore, it doesn't look like it's very fair demand to say Africa must switch as fast as possible, like some other people who are actually the ones who are polluting the climate. But unfortunately, when that is polluted, the fact that there is flood in Namibia, it does not mean it's because Namibia polluted. It simply means the biggest polluters are actually the big economies, but when it's up there in the atmosphere, you don't know where that flood is going to be. You don't know where that fire is going to be. So it cannot be argued to say we need to do as much as the others, especially when we can still benefit from those resources in order for us to increase the livelihood of the African people. So we are not at all denying the fact that we need to do something about the climate change, but we need to do it in a sequenced manner, in such a way that we also benefit from our resources. The third issue is about the impact on the person on the ground, especially now specifically on the oil and gas that we have discovered. Yes, it has been said, the oil has been discovered. It's still not flowing. It's not like there's oil now, so it's not, there's no oil that's yet being sold, but we have discovered the oil. There is a process for that oil to be brought out, and therefore we can get revenue from that. But the question is then, what happens when we get that revenue? How do we benefit from that? And especially there's the feeling that, well, if we are not careful, suddenly this is only going to benefit a few people, especially those, if it was somebody else I won't mention, they'll say it will benefit the elite. The elite, and they're not the general Namibians, or those who are connected to politicians, like myself. Don't really deserve it. And it's true. If you're not careful, that we have the right processes and system in place to make sure that the revenue that we are going to get out of this resource is going to go to all of us in equal measure. It can happen then that actually can cause problems for us. The question of whether it's going to be a blessing or a curse, it can actually materialize if you are not careful in terms of how do we manage this to make sure then that all of us benefit from this resource. Shona did mention the issue of local content, for example, which again is one way how we can maximize the benefit from this resource. Instead of us only concentrating on the revenue that we are going to get from this resource by selling it, either through taxations or other levies like royalty that we are going to get from this, we have to make sure that we are prepared. We are in a position to be the ones that are providing the services that will be required to be provided to this industry. It's a new industry, yes. We might not have all the skills, but it's time that we start to learn and prepare ourselves. The first thing we need to do is to understand what it is, what will be required. And once you understand what will be required, then also maybe hopefully also to go another step to say, how do I actually make myself ready to make sure that I'll be the one to prevent or to provide that service. And that's really, I think, the crux of the issues. Sometimes we want to do things, but we are not prepared. We are not prepared to learn and be the experts, be the ones we can be counted for. So I'm hoping that really we have enough time, maybe not enough time, but we do have time to make sure that we understand while we are at the beginning of this industry, we understand what is required, and we make ourselves ready to make sure that we are ready to do that, real entrepreneurs, and not just the, you know, there are people who want to think they are entrepreneurs, but they aren't really entrepreneurs. These are the guys who just work with their briefcase and they say, oh, I know Minister Tom Alweendo and therefore he's my whatever, and therefore we'll just do a deal. Which it might happen, but that guy is not really a business person. He's not a businesswoman. And therefore we want to make sure that those who really want to actually really be business people take time, find out more, ask questions, and prepare yourself to make sure that you play the role you must play when this happens. And therefore, local content is very, very important. One of the things that we are going to be doing is that knowing very well that we don't have all the skills to be able to provide all the services right now, the international oil companies that are going to be operating here will be required to make sure that they do have joint ventures with Namibians. But we just hope it will be the right Namibians who are also seriously wanting to know what it takes. So, but it will be a requirement to make sure that at least we learn as we go, and to make sure that we will be our masters of what is happening. I guess you say, yes, we did visit Norway, for example. They also started off where we are today. It was the American companies that were operating their oil and gas industry. But right now, it's actually Norwegian companies that are doing it. So why can't we be in the same position? But if we can, or if you want to be that, we need to prepare ourselves to make sure that we can do that.